The Doctor Who Christmas special came out yesterday and we got introduced to a new Doctor and a new companion. But the biggest reveal was at the very end where the character Mrs. Flood broke the fourth wall in an incredible way, literally winking at the audience and saying,
"Never seen a TARDIS before."
But who on earth is this character? My first thoughts were the Missy, or the Rani, or even River Song, or just someone brand new completely. But maybe she isn't any of them. Now, this is going to be a very timey-wimey theory, and you can tell me in the comments how realistic this is, but could she actually be a future version of Ruby Sunday herself? Let's get into it. Now, it is very easy to just assume she is a Time Lord. Heck, her house has a blue door, which could be a hidden TARDIS for all we know, and how else would anyone who isn't a Time Lord know what a TARDIS is? However, it's the way she acts when we first see the TARDIS that makes me question all this. When she first sees the TARDIS, she complains about it being a police box and seems to appear she either doesn't know what the TARDIS is or has a great distaste for it. Now, she could just be acting. We've seen people like the Missy do this many times before. However, to me, I don't think she is acting. I think she is being realistic, and it's actually when the Doctor goes and changes time where this opinion changes. When time is changed throughout the episode, afterwards Mrs. Flood isn't against the TARDIS but is instead sitting and watching for it. She is expectant and likes the TARDIS rather than dislikes it. And we know before time was changed that Ruby never travels with the Doctor. It's only after the Doctor saves her in the past that she then decides to travel with him because she uses that to work out he is a time traveller and then goes on to find the TARDIS. So it would have only been after time changed where Ruby would learn about the TARDIS. Therefore, when Mrs. Flood seems to love the TARDIS and is waiting for it only after time has changed, could suggest she is now a grown-up version of Ruby who has travelled with the Doctor before. The fact that she seems so happy and inspired when she is talking to the Doctor as if she knows him, and the fact that at the very end when Ruby is working out that the Doctor is a time traveller and then wants to go and find him, who is it who gives her the final clue? None other than Mrs. Flood, which, considering Ruby is working out a time traveller, it would be a very timey-wimey thing that her future self then gives her the final clue to work out how to travel in time, but for her past self. It's very timey-wimey and complicated to get your head around. And we also have that final scene at the end of The Giggle where a hand picks up the Toymaker's golden tooth. Now, loads of people do think this is the Rani or the Missy, and now lots are assuming it is Mrs. Flood who is one of those people. However, I don't think it is necessarily a coincidence that in this shot where all we see is a woman's hand, that they added one tiny little detail. She has ruby red painted fingernails. The colour ruby for Ruby Sunday. And we know Russell is very intentional with his names and has been since he returned. Rose Noble comes to mind as a hint at Rose Tyler, as a way for Donna to be subconsciously remembering the Doctor. And we also know that this show has had a lot of experience with using people's names as a way to hint at things. If Ruby Red equals the Ruby Red fingernails, we know for River Song, translated to Melody Pond, that one comes to mind. So it could very easily be suggesting that Mrs. Flood is Ruby Sunday. However, she could also be connected to Ruby in another way without necessarily being a future version of Ruby herself. Mrs. Flood could actually be Ruby's mother, and maybe she doesn't even realise it. And again, once time has changed, it has an effect. Because if Mrs. Flood is the mother, then maybe when the Doctor went back in time, it will be revealed in a later episode in Series 14 or Season 1, whatever you want to call it, that he did actually go and see the mother. Because in the episode, we see him hesitant and is about to go and see who the mother is, but then he never does. However, we know Doctor Who can sometimes play tricks on us. When I think about this sort of trope, I usually think of Series 6, where in the final episode, we aren't sure whether Matt Smith is going to survive or die, and then it reveals later on in the episode that there was a hidden scene that we only find out at the very end of the episode, where the Doctor is actually in the Tesseract suit, and so it was hidden from the audience, but then it did actually happen. Now, a similar thing could happen here. perhaps he actually did go and see the mother, and the mother then learns about the TARDIS and sees the TARDIS. And so when Mrs. Flood seems happy to see Ruby go into the TARDIS after time has been changed, it's because as her mother, she knows who the Doctor is and knows that she will be protected with him. And it's all because of the timey-wimey stuff in the episode. And perhaps Mrs. Flood's initial distaste towards the TARDIS and the Doctor could be Ruby ends up having a bad ending with the Doctor, and therefore Mrs. Flood doesn't like police boxes because maybe the Doctor left her or something like that in the future. And it wouldn't be the first time where we've had a sort of timey-wimey companion situation with the Doctor. Companions who come to mind are definitely Amy Pond and Clara Oswald, both who ended up in a very timey-wimey situation, and it was to do with how the Doctor went back in time and changed their past or changed their future as to why they ended up travelling with the Doctor in the first place. Perhaps we're dealing with a similar situation here. Either way, I'm aware this probably isn't the case, and it's much more likely that she is either the Missy or the Rani or River Song, or maybe even an incarnation of the Doctor. However, I still think it's fun to think of all the possibilities, and I could see some timey-wimey scenario where Mrs. Flood does end up being a future version of Ruby herself. But either way, she's definitely going to return, and so far, it is looking like she could be some sort of villain, and it is making me very excited for May when we get the brand new series. But anyway, guys, that's the end of this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, make sure that you smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Guys, let me know down below in the comments what do you think about this. Who do you reckon Mrs. Flood is? Do you think she is the Missy or the Master or some incarnation of that Time Lord? Do you reckon she is the return of the Rani? I know Russell T Davies even mentioned in podcast that, you know, everyone wants him to bring back the Rani, and he brought back the Master originally, so it could make sense. Do you think she is the timeless child or another incarnation of the Doctor, maybe a future incarnation of the Doctor? I think most people are thinking she is definitely a Time Lord because she knows about the TARDIS. However, not every Time Lord knows that the TARDIS is a police box, so maybe it's a Time Lord that we know about. Or do you reckon she isn't a Time Lord and it's some other scenario? She could just be a brand new villain. She could be part of the Pantheon of Discord with the Trickster, because I know it's likely he might return, and I really hope he does. Or do you reckon that this theory might have some stake? Do you reckon that maybe it's a possibility that Mrs. Flood could be a future version of Ruby Sunday? Let me know all your thoughts down below and what you think of this theory and what you thought about the Christmas special. I personally really liked it, and I'm so excited for the next series. Let me know all your thoughts down there. And as always, we've been here on Gated Theories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.